Hi, today I will be illustrating a character from a very unpopular, very low-key, very indie cartoon TV show from the 2000s. I'm actually kind of reluctant to do this video because I'm not sure if everybody is gonna be familiar with this franchise. But this is basically the mascot of the show. He is the star, everybody knows him and his lore. And I thought, why not honor him, especially with this month's theme? So that's why I'm painting him today. In all actuality, I'm not really sure why I decided to make a fan art of this niche character. I just saw a clip randomly the other day and I was like, this character would look good painted in my art style. And that's why I'm painting him today. And I also feel like this would be a great break from the usual digital art videos on my channel. I feel like I always do character design, and in all of those videos I take myself too seriously. I always do them with the purpose and intent to make beautifully drawn characters. So in this video I thought I could just do something very carefree, very fun and loose, which is why today I'm painting King Neptune from the hit TV show SpongeBob SquarePants. If I'm being honest, I actually don't recall if I have seen this episode of SpongeBob. It's called Neptune's Spatula. I think I have seen it because when I saw the clip the other day, I remember bits and pieces of it, but I can't recall iconic lines, specific dialogue, or even the whole sequence I'm unfamiliar with, which is so bizarre because I feel like at this point a lot of the older SpongeBob episodes are very iconic and very, very familiar and very predictable, and I don't remember this episode at all. And also, I don't remember King Neptune looking like this because if you've seen the first official SpongeBob movie from the 2000s, that is a very different looking character. And from what I've researched, there's actually 3 King Neptunes across all the TV shows and movies. They just have different canons and entirely different designs, which is so confusing to me. I don't even want to pretend like I'm knowledgeable with that stuff because I don't know nothing. And also, when did we care about what's canon to the SpongeBob universe? But anyway, I don't think that's information that I'm interested in. That's a whole other tangent. Back to this illustration. As you've seen, I kind of revised his head sketch because the initial design I had in mind wasn't very striking to me. I feel like his pose required a more daunting and very intimidating head angle. And I think this is a significant improvement from the previous sketch. And what I'm doing now is making a solid fill layer of the silhouette of the character. I would say this is pretty standard method for me in my painting process. It's basically me doing kind of a paper cutout of the character, and what that does is all of the painting, all of the rendering and adjustments and color overlays that I plan to do on this illustration is gonna be clipped over that cutout shape. Everything that I do from here on out as far as rendering will be kept within the threshold of that specific shape. I don't have to worry about the colors going out of the line or going out of the shape because everything is congregated to the silhouette. There's no risk of elements overlapping. And another benefit of this is you can also do separate layers for each element. For example, his orange hair and facial hair is in a completely different layer, even though they're clipped to the same base cutout. I mostly use this method during the first few stages of the illustration. It's very convenient when you're undecided about the color scheme, if you're still not sure where to place shadows, or if you want your values to be adjusted still. This is a pretty convenient tool to know. At this point though, I think the values that I established here as well as the color scheme are pretty decided and finalized, that I actually merged all the layers in the canvas, which is a very impractical and unhealthy practice because if you want to pursue digital work, you want the assets of your illustration kind of set in different layers. Because you still want the ability to revise each element, it's going to be easier for you to adjust your illustration if these elements are on separate layers. This is a very important thing to remember, especially if you want to pursue commercial work. It's not a good practice because your art directors will have copious amounts of revisions and adjustments, and you're just going to make it hard on yourself. So please separate your layers. I feel like the only reason I prefer to merge all my layers as I'm rendering or before I render is because it reminds me of working with traditional media or traditional art materials. You know, when you work with acrylics or oils, you don't have the privilege of using separate layers. You're kind of just stuck with what you laid on the canvas or paper. And I mean, you could paint over it or use some sort of eraser, but it's not the same as having access to revising or fixing or tweaking specific elements individually, which is what digital art can do. I think I've discussed this before, but the brush set that I'm currently using, which is created by Rutkowski, blends the colors better if they're on the same layer. I guess you could argue that I could customize my brushes to do the same thing while maintaining separate layers, but I don't know, I just like the feel of painting something from start to finish on one layer. But it also does feel very boastful and self-congratulatory to be like, hey, I did this painting on one layer. Or, you know, or maybe I do have an affinity for making things more difficult than they should be. I don't know. Anyway, back to this painting. I'm at a point where I'm basically starting the rendering. I'm painting over the base layers from earlier, and I'm using my favorite brush from the set I mentioned, and many people wonder how I achieved this textured look, and it's all in the brush setting. First, let's start with the brush that I'm using. It's from the Rutkowski set, as I've mentioned, and this brush specifically has a very distinct shape in which it tapers to one side. So if you lay down strokes, one side is very solid and is very opaque, and it kind of fades on the other side. I think it's very efficient to use because it looks like you established values from dark to light with just one single brush stroke. Back to the brush settings. If you're using Clip Studio Paint like I am, you're probably familiar with the window called Subtool Details. It's a window pop-up that shows you the properties of your brush and how to customize and adjust it. And there's a lot of tabs here that's basically the characteristic of your brush that I encourage you to experiment and play around with on your own, because you might stumble upon a specific brush setting that's customized to your personal taste. So just tinker around and figure out what works best for you. Anyway, the only brush property that I like to experiment on mostly is the color jitter, and when you open that tab, it displays two major settings. My favorite setting is the change brush tip color, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You basically toggle the hue, saturation, and luminosity of your brush tip, which is the single brush point that you lay on the canvas, and it basically alters the appearance of your brush. It goes from a flat color to the illusion of having texture, because in a single stroke there's a variety of colors, values, saturation, and I usually don't have a default setting for this. I adjust this as I paint, and you can see that in the brush strokes that I employ on the painting. And if I'm feeling brave and spicy, I also activate the randomize per stroke setting, which basically it's the same setting, but the color change is applied per stroke, as opposed to the previous one, which is the color jitter applied to each individual brush tip point, if that makes sense. I frequently have to adjust this setting throughout my painting process because I also have to take into consideration the values that are already on the painting and the colors that are already established. So it's just a matter of experimenting and trial and error. My secret to the organic looking brushstrokes though is that I use a hatching technique. As you can see, I almost use a stripe pattern to shade and color some of these areas. And I think that implies the existence of brush strokes without actually doing the tedious work. Basically a simplified painterly art style. And I never blend these elements or use the smudge tool. I really love the textured look. I think that's all I can say about this artwork for now. I just wanted to show you my art process and how my art style has developed since I first experimented with it last year. I think I found my comfort zone. The techniques I'm using are quite refined and unique to me. It's satisfying my craving for actual painting work without actually being too laborious. It also makes my workflow very efficient. I don't finish a piece and get exhausted as I used to. I'm very content with the work I put in and the work that I produce. So yeah, please enjoy the rest of this painting time lapse. Okay, so I'm back with some narration. I figured this was the appropriate time to slink back in. I'm currently painting the titular Neptune spatula from the episode. And I'm just gonna render it in gold, just like in the episode. It's unfortunate that I don't have the attention span to actually sit down and watch a show or a movie, because I'd love to binge watch this show. I used to love it as a kid, and of course I know the classic episodes and lines, and I don't know, this is probably one of the very few objectively perfect TV shows of all time. I mean, everything is still timeless, I think. The humor is still landing. The characters are so unique and still likable. The world building is still fresh, I think. Everybody's just buying into what they're selling, and that's a dream as a showrunner and writer and director, I guess. I don't know, that got me thinking, because like I said, I don't remember if I watched this episode, and I still haven't watched it. So my general idea of this character and the entire concept of the episode, I got it from the one clip that I saw and a short synopsis from a very helpful Spongebob wiki page. So there's that. All I know is that in the episode, Neptune was awoken by Spongebob, and then he challenged Spongebob to a cook-off battle situation, and since Neptune is a god, he's able to produce a ton of Krabby Patties, as opposed to Spongebob, who's just able to produce one dainty but humble Krabby Patty. And basically the thesis of the episode is that it's not about how many you can make, it's about how you make it. And Spongebob was able to make his single Krabby Patty with love, and that's sweet. That's the thing about these cartoons, especially the older ones, is that they're very wholesome and very earnest. But I couldn't tell you what the stakes are in the episode. I just found it very interesting. Again, I wish I had the attention span to sit down and just watch. I feel like I don't have that in me anymore. I feel like my media consumption is more focused on listening while working instead of just devoting my time watching something. That's why I prefer, listening to YouTube videos, video essays, podcasts, audiobooks. Anyway, I'm at the polishing stage of the illustration at this point. I think I'm just dealing with the backdrop now, and when I usually do these self-indulgent character illustrations, I default to a textured white backdrop, but I think this painting warrants a background or something, so I defaulted to the bikini bottom landscape, so to speak. The visual development team of Spongebob really crushed it, because this was so fun to incorporate in this illustration. What a cool sky scenery underwater. Yeah, really cool art direction on this show. And for the final touches, I am putting scales on his fishtail. It is so funny that throughout my digital art journey, this is the first time that I actually made a custom scale brush texture. It was so easy to customize this brush in Clip Studio Paint, and I'm glad I have it, because I'm pretty sure I'll use it a ton in future projects. And that is it for this illustration. I think I finished this within a day, excluding break and resting time, but this was a pretty quick illustration. This was a very fun project to do. It's such a cute concept, something that is still in my comfort zone but kind of different. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you again next time.
So, little one, you think you have what it takes to be my fry cook? I will prove your worthlessness. You shall be tested with a challenge!